Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program's intimate conversation, How Do I Love Thee? Let me count the ways. Focusing on the challenges and strategies of navigating a breast cancer journey as a couple. We're just gonna wait for one more minute and then we will go over just some housekeeping items before we begin. Today's forum is being recorded. It will be available on our program's website and YouTube page. At Adelphi, we value your opinion and want to hear from you. We welcome you to complete a survey at the end of our forum, which you will be able to access in our chat box. Please make sure to complete the survey so we can continue to serve you and provide you with the programming you wish to see more of. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to see you. My name is Adriana Valencia, and I am a bilingual social worker with the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program. I am honored to co-facilitate today's forum with my colleague, Nina Foley, fellow social worker at the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program.
Thank you, Adriana, and welcome everyone to this forum. For over 40 years, the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program has been providing supportive services to individuals and families affected by breast cancer. Not only do we operate one of the longest running support hotlines in the country, but we offer individual one-on-one supportive services, support groups, patient navigation, as well as educational forums and programs and programming. Today's forum is sponsored by the Manhasset Junior Breast Coalition.
If there is one thing we can agree on, it's that relationships take work, whether together 2, 10, or 55 years. Throw in an unexpected breast cancer diagnosis, and things can get shaky, even for those with the strongest foundation. Throughout a partner's diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and beyond, a couple may face various changes in relationship roles, routines, and responsibilities. The specific stress involved in maintaining a healthy relationship and navigating a breast cancer diagnosis has been researched in numerous academic studies.
Studies indicate that couples who cope best with breast cancer are able to address the illness as a team with a shared sense of purpose and responsibility. The benefit of approaching breast cancer as a we disease has been documented to strengthen a couple's relationship.
Thanks, Nina. Today, we have 3 of our wonderful volunteers and survivors, Tim, Cindy, and Kimberly, and their partners joining us. They have been gracious to open their hearts and share with us how they were able to navigate their breast cancer journey together and come up on top.
Thanks, Adriana. The first couple we're going to discuss is Tim and Sandy. Tim and Sandy have been married for 5 decades. They met the summer after Tim's freshman year at college at a mutual friend's home, where Tim was playing poker. Sandy, entering her senior year of high school, was absolutely smitten, and the rest is history. Tim and Sandy share that they have worked tirelessly to build a home filled with love and adventures for themselves and their 3 amazing children, daughters Jamie and Molly and son Barry. The couple had been married for 52 years when they learned Tim had been diagnosed with advanced breast cancer in June of 2020 during COVID. Not even in their wildest dreams would they have imagined the roller coaster ride that they would embark on. Tim and Sandy currently serve as volunteers with the New York State Adelphi Breast Cancer Hotline and Support Program. They are committed to sharing Tim's story and helping other men learn the signs of breast cancer and the importance of performing regular self-breast exams. Tim and Sandy actively participate and educate the public about male breast cancer disease in outreaches for the Adelphi Breast Cancer, as well as organizing a baseball fundraiser. The couple loves to travel together and seek out restaurants of the local cuisine during their travels. We asked Tim and Sandy to share one fun fact about each other. Tim was a New York City yellow cab driver for 4 years from 1970 to 74, while Sandy is a whiz at doing jigsaw puzzles.
Thanks, Nina. Also with us today, Cindy and Bruce. Little did Cindy and Bruce know they were about to meet the love of their lives when they were set up on a blind date by Bruce's cousin, who also happened to be a close friend of Cindy's. One unforgettable date and 41 years of marriage under their belt, the Finks are stronger than ever. They are the proud and loving parents of Dana and Jackie and grandparents to 6-year-old Sarah. Cindy was first diagnosed with breast cancer in 1994 at the age of 36. She underwent a unilateral lumpectomy, radiation, and chemotherapy. 16 years later, in 2010, the couple learned that Cindy's cancer had come back. At the age of 53, Cindy had to undergo a mastectomy of the same breast, followed by chemotherapy. Since then, Cindy and Bruce have had to face additional health complications as a result of Cindy's treatment. Most recently, Cindy underwent a successful heart transplant. Cindy recalls the difficulty of trying to juggle it all when first diagnosed. Cindy reached out to the Young Women's Support Group at Adelphi and was able to connect with others facing a similar situation. She credits the support she gained through the group in helping her move forward. Today, Cindy is proud to be able to give back. She's a volunteer with the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program, helping others diagnosed with breast cancer. Cindy and Bruce adore spending time together, especially since they are now both retired. They enjoy taking long walks in beautiful places and exploring. They are also self-described foodies and love to eat quality food. A fun fact about the couple: Bruce is a marathon runner and a cyclist who enjoys endurance athletics, while Cindy loves to cook and bake. She has also rediscovered her artistic ability since retiring 4 years ago.
Thanks, Adriana. Our final couple is Kimberly and Anthony. Never in a million years at the tender age of 30 did Kim think she would hear the words, "You have breast cancer." Life as she knew it changed. Days quickly began to be filled with doctor and specialist appointments, followed by talk of surgery and treatment options. A testament to strength and determination, she was committed to seeing this journey through successfully. Like many others who are unable to share their story during one of the most difficult times of her life, Kim found herself lacking the support she so desperately yearned for from her partner at the time. Having experienced her diagnosis and treatment not feeling supported, Kim took time to rebuild her strength and her sense of self, something she strongly advocates to other young women. Post-treatment, life would once again surprise Kim, but this time in the form of finding true love. Anthony, a regular at the restaurant where Kim worked, would become her rock. Anthony was able to see Kim for who exactly she was and wished to celebrate every bit of her. In addition to Anthony's eyes, breast cancer in Anthony's eyes, breast cancer was just one chapter in Kim's story. With her permission, he was ready to step in and co-author a joint life of hope, love, and adventures. Today, Kim and Anthony have been married for 10 years. They have built a beautiful home together with their spunky and beautiful 7-year-old daughter, Savannah, who is the light of their life. Kim has been a volunteer with the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program since 2019, helping other young women going through a similar situation. Kim is always ready to find the time to help other young women navigate her diagnosis, regardless of how hectic her own life is. Kim and Anthony share a love of music and enjoy attending concerts together. A fun fact about Anthony is he attended Columbia University, where he pitched on their baseball team. And a fun fact about Kim is she loves to travel and has camped in the Amazon. And she is also 5 feet 9 inches tall and wears a 6.5 size shoe. Again, thank you all for so much for being with us today and agreeing to share your story with us.
Thanks, Nina. So let's get started. Many of the folks we speak with on our hotline and one-on-one share about the changes they've experienced throughout their breast cancer journey and beyond. This question is for Cindy. Cindy, Nina and I have heard from others that the unexpected and truthfully unwanted changes cancer can bring on can be incredibly difficult, not only physically, but emotionally as well, especially when your independence is suddenly compromised. What were some of the changes in responsibilities and roles at home that shifted during your journey? And how did it feel to have your independence compromised and have to rely on Bruce a bit more?
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. We went through several difficult journeys where I had to experience the loss of control of my home, of my life, of my independence. And during that time, it was hard for me to sit back after having a mastectomy, after going through chemo, after having a heart transplant and recovering at home and not be able to get up and get what everyone wants, clean up the kitchen, make the meals, put away the groceries, even shop for groceries. And that's where Bruce came in. He's been so amazing and adaptive over the years. And as the situation warranted, to learn where things go in the kitchen, learn how to navigate a supermarket, which was totally foreign to him because food was my thing. And I just handled that happily because that's what I wanted. But being able to let go of that control and independence was very hard for me. And I had to trust him. And even when he got the label wrong and bought the wrong product or put something away in a place I didn't want it in the kitchen, I had to just step back and say, okay, he's doing this, he's doing the best he can. And I just have to relax about it and let him take care of me and not insist on getting up and doing everything myself. And he was
I didn't know there were 15
helpful.
different types of cottage cheese. I'm just.
It's tough.
It wasn't cottage cheese. I brought home cottage cheese.
Bruce, what would you say helped you become or helped you be a supportive partner during this difficult time, especially when you notice Cindy may not be feeling her best emotionally?
I strongly believe that our thoughts are a big part of the way we go about things. And I do not understand a reason to go through something with a negative attitude. When you have to go through something in life, you can go through it positively or negatively. I've never gone through anything with a negative attitude and made it better by doing that. So I try to keep a pretty positive, focused thought process. You mentioned my athletics also. So the running, the bike riding, the strength training, they're a sanity for me. And I think people also confuse that taking care of yourself isn't necessarily selfish. That is what lets us, that's what lets us come back after that hour, hour and a half of solitude, and then do the things that we need to do for someone else with a better mindset and better thought process. So I just always selfishly tried to take care of myself first. Again, not realizing that's selfish, so that I could help Cindy. There were days that she felt very sick, and I, particularly through the heart transplant, wasn't hungry. But I knew that I needed to eat something, so I'd make sure to go get some food because it's been 4 hours. It's time to take in some calories. Otherwise, the adrenaline's going to go away, the sugar levels are going to drop, and then I'm not going to be able to make good decisions and support her. So you need to just remember to take care of yourself, keep a good attitude about things, so that you can support the person that you love and care about.
Thank you so much.
It's very important for, as the survivor, or the person who is sick, to ask for help. A lot of people are stoic and I'm not going to ask him, I'm going to do it all myself. And you have to ask for help And it's not selfish to care about yourself. As Bruce said, self-care is not selfish.
Thank you so much. And both of you know what you just shared was so important as far as self-help, and also about looking at your own individual needs before you can help someone else. Those really great advice and really helpful for others, I'm sure, as well. As we mentioned, whether you're together for 2 years or 50, hearing the words "you have cancer" is never easy to hear as a couple. The stresses an illness can bring onto a marriage is unsurmountable. This question is going to be for the group, but I'm going to ask each couple individually. When things became difficult or frustration was at a high, what helped you to get past it? The first couple I'm going to ask is going to be Tim and Sandy.
I think the communication, I can't stress enough how important it is to make your partner aware of what's going on. Whether you're feeling miserable and you can't drag your ass out of bed, or you're feeling, strangely elated because you managed to get up in the morning. And as Bruce was saying, I worked out every day. Every day that I went to chemo, I worked out. I rode on the rowing machine. It became a matter it became a challenge. I was damned if I was going to let this disease stop me. But if I didn't have Sandy to share my thoughts and my feelings with, and just having her there to be a sounding board, I know I was miserable. You can't not be miserable at times. I mean, there's certain effects from chemo. Everybody has their own side effects. I had some that were bizarre. And just somebody to sit there and say, listen, I understand you're not feeling well. What can I do to help? Something that simple. Even though, sometimes there's nothing that can be done except just to put up with it. Even just knowing that you had somebody to share that with is a big plus. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through the whole experience without having somebody, to share with or to unload on.
When you're saying that, Tim, what I envision is both having her there physically as well as an emotional support. You said it so perfectly. And just to be someone that you can complain to if you need to, or be a sounding board and know that she's there for you, which is so essential in life, in general, just to be there for the good times and the bad times, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next couple, I'll just reread the question in case you don't remember it. This is for Cindy and Bruce. When things became difficult or frustration was at a high, what helped you get past it? And that's for Cindy and Bruce.
Okay, so I think from my perspective, what helped me get past it was wanting to help my wife. You just have to kind of bury your own thoughts a little bit and step up and try to assist in whatever way possible. It's the frustration comes that it doesn't seem to be, doesn't matter what you do, you can't do as much as you want to. And just realize that we're all doing our best, and your spouse also understands that you're doing your best. And as long as we both know that we're both working in the same direction, it alleviates some of the frustration. As Tim said, there's certain times that you just, doesn't matter how hard you try, you're going to get frustrated because you feel like you're losing the battle. It doesn't matter what you're doing. And that's whether it's breast cancer or just life in general. There are times it doesn't matter what you do, you're just not stepping ahead as fast as you want to. And we have to learn how to deal with those frustrations and certainly not take it out on one another or ourselves.
That's very important. Remember that you have someone there with you, and don't beat them up because you're feeling so sick and you can't eat and you can't lift your head off the pillow and your chest hurts so much from the mastectomy or whatever it is. You remember that they're trying to help you. Don't just be kind. Always keep that in mind. Be positive. Take one little step at a time. Don't go for the whole enchilada. You're not going to be better tomorrow. It's one step at a time, baby steps with a positive attitude, and that will get you really far.
And I would ask that people understand that if you're coming down hard on your spouse, most of us, our harshest critic is ourselves. So if your spouse is coming at you negatively and you're beating yourself up because you're not able to achieve what you want to do for them, it just doesn't set up a good situation, doesn't set up a good day, and it doesn't set up good communication.
Thank you so much. And finally, I'm going to ask Kimberly and Anthony, when things became difficult or frustration was at a high, what helped you to get past it?
Yeah. I guess for us, it's mostly just having to talk to each other and understand really what's going on. Because sometimes the things you don't say are the things that will eat you up and get it. Like, you know, he wasn't with me through my, I guess, the worst of it, but he was with me through the aftermath and the frustration. And sometimes I just kind of tend to keep things to myself because I don't want to burden anybody around me. So, and you know, I know he knows me well. So he'll be like, what's going on? I know you're worried. And he, you know, I think just getting it out and getting it off your chest and just saying it, because, you know, and you should, you know, we know each other well, I think. And I know immediately when something's wrong with you, and I think vice versa.
Well, I think when I met Kim, she was coming from a bad relationship. And so that it was kind of foreign to her to be able to express herself basically at all, because it wasn't really accepted in her previous relationship. And so initially when I met her, which was during, you know, the reconstructive aspect of surgeries and whatnot, she wasn't 100% comfortable yet with sharing because she came from such a bad situation. And so I think just kind of pulling it out of her, like little by little at the beginning, and her being able to trust me to be like, oh, I can do this without, you know, any kind of fear. That was kind of the experience early on, but I think we gained each other's trust pretty quickly. And then from that point on, it's like, I feel like it really helped her through her recovery, because she realized finally, oh, okay, now I have somebody that actually is supporting me, instead of, you know, only wants to hear what he wants to hear. You know what I mean? And so I think once she realized that, it kind of like opened the gates of like, oh wow, we're really going to do this together, you know.
And it sounds like it was that you had to learn how to communicate step by step while you were learning to trust him as well. And now, you know, in the beginning, Kim, you were saying how he knows when something's wrong. So if you're not communicating with words, you're communicating in other ways, and that you're so connected at this point that you can read each other without words, and as well as using your words. Is that
to not feel like a burden, you know, which I did in my past relationship, you know, and that's the worst thing you can make somebody feel like, I think, is a burden, especially when you're going through the worst thing you could possibly be going through and feeling the worst. And I was a very independent person, and, you know, loved to do things for myself, and not being able to do that at all because the chemo brought me down to a really bad place. It was the most frustrating time of my life. And you just need somebody to, you know, I mean, I feel honestly, if I would have gone through it with him instead of my ex, I would have been in such a better place, probably physically as well as mentally. Honestly, like, I feel like, you know, like you said, the
power of positivity, right?
Is 100%. And I was getting it from every angle, and it was tough. So I'm just grateful now that I have him, and this is, you know, we can talk about everything.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now and talk to Tim and Sandy. So Tim, you were diagnosed with breast cancer in June of 2020. The world was living in fear, and everything we knew as we knew it came to a standstill due to COVID. Tim and Sandy, could you share a bit about some of the difficulties you faced as you navigated Tim's care during such a unique time? And also, could you also share with us some of the practical strategies you implemented that were helpful?
Well, I was diagnosed in early June of 2020. And the diagnosis was very specific. You have stage 3 breast cancer. But conversely, then, they immediately send you to see a surgeon, and the surgeon says, yeah, well, we have to do a mastectomy. We don't know when we can schedule it.
COVID.
Because COVID had basically, stopped all elective surgeries, and why that was considered elective, I don't know, but there was a period of 2.5 months from diagnosis. The first week of June, surgery was the last day of August. And I think for us, that may have been the most difficult time, because you know what's wrong and you can't do anything about it.
Talk about not having control, right? First you
Right.
have cancer diagnosis, and then you have that to deal with.
And I admit to being a control freak. Sandy, no, there's no question about it. We've been together for a very long time. I'm a control freak, and I need to make sure that everything within my purview is under my control. So the frustration level, and there's nobody to complain to, because during COVID you have a situation that none of us had ever had to deal with before. So really, we made the best of it, which means you did what everybody else was doing during COVID, which was sitting in the backyard. It was springtime and the weather was nice. We had a lot of, I think we watched a lot of movies, and found a website called makemeacocktail.com. And every night before dinner, we went online and looked up some exotic cocktail. And
Sounds like a good distraction.
But that's what it was fun. Sometimes it's just finding a distraction. I think that's a good choice of words, because everything else was a brick wall at that point, and there was nobody. You could complain, nobody was going to listen. There wasn't even anybody.
Well, Sandy would listen, I assume, when you complain.
Yeah, well, of course, but that we had a mutual complaint, because the frustration in that respect was equal. You get that diagnosis, and the next, what's the next thing you want to do is you get this out of my body.
Yeah.
But COVID really took its toll, dropping him off for surgery at 5 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what was going on, picking him up at 5 o'clock at night, immediately after the surgery. Holy moly. I wasn't a nurse. I didn't know what I had to do, and we learned very quickly.
Well, I remember, Sandy, you talk a lot about taking notes and keeping a whole book, right, of everything that he went through.
Well, that's because whenever he had a doctor's appointment, I couldn't be there with him, but they would phone me in.
I put her on speakerphone from the doctor's office, but it was important, because she knew, and my professional training is to take notes and keep track of things and write minutes of meetings. But when it's you that's undergoing this diagnosis and the aftermath, you're the last person who's going to be able to keep track of what's going on. It was not my idea. That was Sandy's idea. That to make sure that she was the co-recipient of information, because she was much more likely to write it down and get it accurate. And I would come home from the doctor's office half an hour later, and she would review with me the discussion. And I would say, I don't remember talking about that at all. I have no recollection of that. Thank
And
goodness.
it also helped us to write down questions for the next time, and to be on the same page about what we needed to know.
And as a byproduct, it forced us communication to exchange information that we had gathered through the same experience, but my being there and she being on the phone. And sometimes that helped us straighten out or understand maybe what either one of us might not have clearly understood from the actual, talking with the doctor or the physician's assistant or the lab or whatever it was.
So it sounds like you both used your own natural skills collectively to help, to help during Tim's diagnosis and treatment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, and that was you really painted a good picture of how as a couple you worked through such a difficult time, not just with the diagnosis, but also with all the issues around COVID. So thank you so much for sharing so much about that. We're going to move on to Adriana now.
Thanks, Nina. And I have to preface, this question by saying, we were really intentional when selecting our couples, right, and our volunteers. I have to share that Kim is one of the strongest women that I feel, Nina and I have been fortunate enough to work with and get to know through this process. I think her story and Anthony's story, though they were not together during, diagnosis and treatment, they met after, just their story is one of such resilience and hope. We often hear about the supportive spouse and partner and how wonderful it is to have someone to count on during one's cancer journey. But the truth is, this isn't always the case. Nina and I have spoken, to patients who have experienced this. And unfortunately, though many may have a companion, many also have a companion who is unable to meet their needs or offer them the support that they deserve during this breast cancer journey. Kim, this question's for you. You had shared when you were diagnosed and going through treatment, you were in a relationship where despite, trying to voice your needs, they were not met. And oftentimes you were not allowed to voice them because you felt like a burden. Could you describe for us the transformation you experienced in finding a partner in Anthony who listened and understood what you needed and provided you with that safe and loving space where you were able to find your voice once again?
Yes, I mean, I feel like it was just easy in the beginning. I mean, I left a very bad mentally abusive situation. And I had, just had my breast removed. I had no hair from chemo. I was in a state of mind where I was like, I'm not sure if I'll ever meet anybody, and I'm not even sure if I want to meet anybody again. And he was just like this breath of fresh air. It was a year after I left my ex, and I was, starting to get my independence again and working. And I met him, and he was just, it was so easy to be with him and so easy to talk to. And like, I was going through a lot of different illnesses because my immune system was compromised at that point after chemo. And even when I would just have a cold or anything small, he would be there to, with, what do you need? You need soup? I'll come to your apartment, just coming in and just like making me feel like, oh my gosh, like he does care, and it's a genuine care. It's not just like I'm doing this because I have to. And I was just so like blown away that I met anybody that was going to be like a great person. And he was coming from a bad situation also, because he was coming out of a marriage that was terrible and not working. And so I guess we both were in a bad place that we went to a great place. And, I think we made it appreciate it so much more.
Yeah.
Anthony, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You had a question? Or?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that Nina and I loved when speaking with you was you shared when you met Kimberly, you viewed her as a whole person, and that her breast cancer diagnosis was just one part of who
Right.
she was, right? She was a
Right.
whole person, not just her diagnosis. What would you say helped you be attuned to Kimberly's needs and helped her move forward?
Well, first I'll say that Kim was probably, as strong of a person as I think there can be when diagnosed with what she was diagnosed with, because she really made it a priority in her life to not let that diagnosis define her. And so she was happy to barely talk about it. And it was almost like I had to bring it up sometimes, just to make sure that I knew what she was feeling or what she was dealing with. I mean, and so I guess she made it easy in that way. But obviously, underneath the surface, there were times when, like, I knew she was worried about stuff, a pain here, a pain there, whatever. But it was like she's the type of person to not share that, I guess, whether it's from your previous relationship or just that's who you were or are, I think you share a lot more now. But so she made it easy in that way. Like we don't sometimes go days and not even, talk about that kind of stuff, the cancer and whatnot. I mean, obviously she wanted to put it out of her mind, but it was a reality of our life because then she would go get a port taken out or a reconstruction, and then it'd be like a reminder again. And so um I just think that we spoke about it when we needed to, but we didn't make it an everyday affair all day, every day. And then the other part of the question was this. What was the second part of the question that you asked?
Yep, it's just how were you able to help her move forward?
Um, Honestly, I think it was just getting back to normalcy. You know what I mean? As far as um, just doing the things that we love to do together, and not, and just picking a time of day where it was like, okay, if you have a pain or whatever, we would talk, and then we would just move on because Kim didn't want it to define him, and I was fine with that. But I was also concerned at times that like she was keeping stuff inside a little bit, and so we had to kind of find that balance as time went on. But I mean, I kind of looked at her like an inspiration almost because I don't know if I told you, but I was a bit of a hypochondriac in my 20s and 30s and whatnot. And, seeing someone like her go through what she went through, I was like, geez, like, what the hell am I worried about? So um, she was kind of my inspiration, to be honest with you. I just was kind of there to be whatever support she needed. And, she was she's a tough woman. That's all I could tell you.
Thank you so much. And I think you said it right. And what I hear is her resilience. Kim
Yep.
is a resilient person. And I love how you said she didn't let it define her, which I think is a great statement. And thank you both for being so honest and sharing and giving people hope, and making them realize what they do deserve in life. I wanted to move on a little and talk about researchers have indicated that the presence of a strong informal and formal support network is helpful in providing different points of views and avoid isolation and helplessness. So to all three survivors, besides getting support from your partner, what other support networks outside the home did you seek out? And I'm going to start by asking Cindy.
Well, Adelphi support groups, that when I was 36 and knew no one who had cancer at that time, 1994, I knew no one at all. I was very much alone. My kids were little. Our youngest daughter was 2.5, and the oldest was 7. And I didn't know what to do with the diagnosis, with how to cope being sick from the chemo, the radiation. It was really tough. So I reached out to Adelphi, called the hotline, and I got into the young woman support group, and that was the first thing for me. And I stayed with, even after the formal meetings, there were 6 of us that stayed together for over 20 years, meeting every month. 2 of the women passed away subsequently, one from totally unrelated and one ultimately from breast cancer, but there are 4 of us, and we still keep in touch, although now we've all moved down to Florida, at least some full-time and some just for the season, the winter. But it meant a lot in my life to have other women around me that I could speak to and who were going through the same thing. And later years, just even recently, I went to a psychiatrist through the telehealth visits because we weren't meeting in person. But I think seeing a psychiatrist, talking about PTSD from treatment, from what you go through, the shock, the sorrow, the loss of a body part, whatever you're dealing with, being bald, not understanding how your spouse is looking at your deformed body, whatever your issues are, an outside person can be really effective in helping you see yourself as a whole. As Kim said, the whole person, I am not my hair, I am not my mastectomy, I am me, and accepting yourself for who you are. And then you can, when you accept yourself and love yourself, you can love your spouse more and let him in.
Thank you so much. And that was, it helps so many people that you share that with them, and let them know that they're not alone if they're struggling. So I really appreciate that. Kim, I'm going to ask you the same question. So besides, and for you, it's a little unique. If you want to answer this question in terms of your relationship with Anthony, that would be perfect. Besides getting support from him, what other kinds of supports did you seek out during, I guess, your reconstruction?
I mean, yeah, there was times where I probably needed other people around. And I think when I was diagnosed and going through chemo, I was kept very isolated. I didn't have family around and I didn't have friends nearby. I was living in Westchester and my family was all over the country, and my ex was keeping me isolated, and I wish I would have known of things like this. And I guess I just really didn't have that support, and I think it's really important to have that support, and I wish I had somebody to talk to.
What about now, though, as far as your life now? What helps you to feel supported?
I guess my family. Obviously Anthony is the biggest part of my support, and I feel like he is my best friend as well as everything else, and he is the one I want to tell everything to at the end of the day, and like he is the best guy that I know, and so it is great to have that. And I do have a good community where I work, and everybody is supportive, and I have my brother and my father, and
so it's people for you.
People are pretty much my support, and also I feel good helping and giving back, and I feel like that helps me mentally also, because I know I didn't have that, so I want to be able to provide that. And it is important to just ask people for help if you need it. And I'm not
and I know how generous you are as far as finding the time to help others, and it says a lot about who you are as a person. So thank you. And Tim, I'm going to ask you the same question. Besides getting support from Sandy, what other support networks outside the home did you seek out?
Well, Nina, as you know, I run a men's baseball league. And every spring for many years, we've done a charity tournament. After my diagnosis, the team that I manage, these are adult baseball players. I made in 2020, we did have a league, but I was, with my diagnosis and treatment and so on, there was no way I could go to baseball games in the middle of COVID. So I made my teammates aware of it. And the following spring, we changed the focus of our charity tournament to male breast cancer awareness, and with the slogan, "Don't die of embarrassment."
I love that. I think that's so well said.
And we did it again, as you're aware, just a couple of weeks ago. So this is I'm happy to raise some money for
And feel so supported by your team, you know, I'm sure.
But it's not just the team, it's the whole, I mean, the members of the league. We have 33 teams in the league, so there's 500 or 600 guys. And I had a guy come up to me who I know, I've known for years, came up to me last week at a game and said, "Timmy, I went for mammography."
No.
And I said, "How come?" He said, "Because of you."
No.
And that reaching, and again, reaching this one guy is worth the price of admission. So that tells me I've gotten the message out to a whole bunch of people, because I'm not going to see every guy in the league all the time. I'm sure there are other guys who have had that reaction and followed through on it that wouldn't have, but for the education, that I've kind of force fed on the rest of the group, which is, if you're going to take something positive away from the experience.
Yeah, and find that silver lining, right? Yeah. And that's so similar to what Kim was saying, how much she gets out of helping others, right? Just that feeling of being able to connect and help someone and give back to them as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the same question to the partners. What other support networks helped you during this time? I'm going to start with Bruce.
I had a couple of very close friends that I was able to speak to at, quite honestly, all different hours of the day, on a regular basis, just to offload the thoughts and help focus my attention where it needed to be. It was just an ability to talk and not be concerned about what I had to say. I wasn't really, as a caregiver, you don't want to put it on your spouse. And that's complicated, because Cindy is my best friend. So not having Cindy to talk to about some of these things made it a little bit complicated at times, but there are places to put that energy. And hopefully you have other friends that you can go to that can be of assistance, that were really available for me 24 hours a day when necessary.
That's great. Thank you. Anthony, what about you? As far as when Kim might have been going through a difficult period, was there anyone or anything that you reached out to that helped you outside of just your regular relationship with her?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was similar. It was, well, I'm fortunate enough to have a great relationship with my mom and dad. And I have, a handful of really good friends. And, in the beginning, I would just talk to them, and they would, they were kind of, they were very supportive, but they were also, because I was coming out of a divorce, and they were like, are you, I don't know if they said, "Are you sure you want to, commit to someone with all this going on?" And they might have said that for the first couple of weeks, but then as soon as they realized the love that I had for her, immediately, everything kind of just totally flipped. And then it was kind of like Bruce was saying, it was 24/7, where I could call, 4 or 5 different friends, as well as my mom and dad. And for again, it really wasn't, Kim just made a lot of it kind of easy. And again, I wasn't there for the diagnosis and whatnot. I was there for the kind of when she was getting her life back. Mm-hmm. And so she really made it pretty easy in that way, because like I said, there was occasional pain every couple of months, and she was always concerned and kind of tried to hide it, and I would have to get it out of her. But other than that, we really kind of just tried to put it off to the side, so that it didn't kind of, become a big part of our relationship, and that's all Kim did that, I didn't do that.
I hear the patience that you both have with each other. That's what comes through. And just like, I know each of the couples, it's a love story, but yours is a second chance love story. So that has a unique kind of feeling to it as well.
Yeah, for both of us,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Sandy, I'm going to ask you the same question. And I know you had your cocktails that you were watching every night, new cocktails, but what else helped you during
Well,
that time?
The immediate diagnosis was just the most remotest thing from our minds.
Mhm.
And in that vein, somebody I went to high school with, who lives in Maine, went through breast cancer, and he was the only human that I knew of who had experienced this. So we immediately called Alan, and he spent hours with us on the phone, talking us through what was going to happen, what could happen, whatever. He's very active in the Patrick Dempsey Foundation in Maine, and he volunteers his time, and he's healthy and wonderful. And he and Timmy you knew him also from high school, and he and Tim continued to have their own conversation.
And that gave you hope as well, it sounds like. And it sounds similar to Cindy in the sense that you talk to someone who's walked in the same situation, and it gives you such a connection, right?
Well, it also demystified
Mm-hmm.
sort of what was going to happen.
We also have a daughter who had the BRCA gene and had to have a double mastectomy also. And she had two girlfriends who went through the same experience and walked her through. And it really helps to find someone who's lived through it and help you through it, because you need all the help you can get. It's tough.
I agree. I'm going to ask you all, both Kim and Sandy, another question, but let me just say that the one thing that Adriana and I found with all three of these couples is that they share the ability to be able to embrace the power of positivity. And that's what has helped them in supporting each other through their breast cancer journey. So for you, Tim and Sandy, you stated to me previously that your motto is don't give up, go forward, and that you always find the silver linings in situations. Can you just elaborate a little bit on this perspective so that it's helpful for others who are struggling?
Well, some of it's so simple. If you have a normal routine, if you go for Chinese food Sunday nights, okay? It was COVID, post mastectomy, still found the Chinese, Vietnamese restaurants that have been going to for 20 years. That's, a mile from the house. They were open. You could only do takeout, but, in having, maintaining some, consistent normalcy to your existence despite everything else. I think that's an important factor, because it helps to give you some perspective.
So the routine really helped.
Routine and your entire life. You watch Jeopardy every night at 7 o'clock. Even if you can't stay awake through the whole thing because of your medication or whatever, maintaining those routines, taking small pleasures where you find them, it becomes more important.
And that's similar. Sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
Tim still, to this day, he gets up very, very early to go to the gym. And in the middle of the day, he's tired. So I go, it's nap time, honey.
Just like, but the same thing
but
it happened during chemo.
Oh, yeah.
Chemo, chemo obviously has side effects, and there were virtually every day I needed a nap. I needed to take a nap during the day,
Right.
no matter what time I was getting. So, I've incorporated that into my routine. It's a positive addition to my lifestyle.
Gives me some.
I noticed about the two of you, you often finish each other's sentences. So there's a real partnership going there, and you're very aware of each other's needs. So thank you. I'm going to ask Kimberly and Anthony, how do you feel maintaining a positive outlook has helped you as a couple? How have you been able to stay focused and in the moment?
I think it's everything. I think that's just how I live my life in general, especially after leaving a bad situation and cutting 2 cancers out of my life, I guess I'd say. I just don't tend to try to let negative thoughts enter my mind because it's the only way I can survive because I've had a lot of traumatic things happen in my life even before cancer. So like for me, I just move on. And I think I tend to try to instill that in you also, like, because I try to always make him realize, the positivity of things. And, he's not a negative person by any stretch because, but, I think he gets in his own head sometimes. So I think I have to remind him that, like, it's going to be better. It's always going to be okay. And, we'll figure something out no matter what, and I think it's everything. And everything in life, I feel like, is a positive outlook. And what do you think?
I mean, yeah, she basically taught me that. I mean, I was aware that it's great to be positive, think positive, but sometimes it's hard for certain types of people, you know what I mean? And I was one of those people that I was, super relaxed and, tried to be kind to everyone and seemed positive, but I would let everything kind of sit inside and worry about my health or worry about my job or worry about that, and I really didn't share it and nobody really knew it was ever going on. And Kim kind of taught me to, number one, to let it out, and number two, that it's not a helpful way to live your life, and so I think she completely changed kind of the way I think, the way I approach life, the way I approach health. And I realized that thinking that way was kind of had a touch of ego in it, because if you're always worried about yourself, then you can't worry so much about others. And so I guess after meeting her, it was just a perfect mix. And I think she made me a better person in a lot of ways.
Oh, I love that. Thanks so much.
Both did that
Anthony.
for each other, but yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
In speaking with clients, one of the things we often hear when layers are peeled back and the armor comes off is the feeling that cancer has robbed you not only of your peace, but sometimes your future. And this question is for Cindy and Bruce. Diagnosis often forces couples to shift their goals, and this can be heartbreaking. I remember when Nina and I spoke with you, both of you sharing that cancer didn't stop you from reaching your goals, but it did put a pause on them for a bit. Could you share with us a little bit about this and how both of you adapted to these changes?
Yes, through both diagnoses, when I was very young at 36, when we had the little kids, we had to learn to adapt to a new life, then to get through treatment and taking care of the kids and how we were going to do that. And we had, plans for vacations and a carefree life, and all of that was on hold. And then when the cancer came back in 2010, our kids were out of the house at that time, and they came back to help me get through. And we just thought there were so many things that we wanted to do now that the kids were finally in college, or, and graduating college, and we were going to start more traveling and these great plans, and everything was on hold. But we knew that it was just a pause, or we talked to each other about it and stayed positive that it was just going to be a pause. This wasn't the end, and we would just fight through it and be strong and get through it. And then we could get back to what our plans were. And then with recently having the heart transplant, which was an unintended consequence of my radiation during my first cancer treatment. The radiation that they gave me in 1994 enlarged my left ventricle in my heart. And I went into congestive heart failure all the way back then and had a defibrillator implanted and lived with congestive heart failure for many years. And then last year, it's just 1 year ago, in March, my heart gave out. And so there was no going back. And here we were both retired and we thought, okay, retirement time, we're gonna have great time. We live half a year in Florida now. This is wonderful. The next thing I knew, Bruce took care of keeping me alive with CPR and then flying me up here with a medevac to, up to New York, NYU Langone, and getting a new heart within 2 weeks. So life certainly has been on hold, but through it all, we really had to rely on each other and hope for that future, that we were going to have a future, because it was touch and go for a while. But we stayed strong and kept on fighting together. And he helped get me through so much of it. And we fought, and I never thought I would make it back down to Florida, but now we've been here since January. We're going to come back up in May. But this was a dream of just being here that I didn't think I was going to be able to have. And now I'm doing fantastic. And, there's just so much hope, and you just keep working toward it a little at a time. And it all stems back to that original breast cancer, but it's been a long journey, and we've had a great outcome. And, we have trips planned out of the country for this year that I never thought we'd be able to do. So it was really a pause, several pauses, but now a great future.
And I think that one of the things that all of these things have taught us is that if there's something you want to do in life, do it sooner rather than later. Do not procrastinate, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. So if you have something you want to do and you can do it, find a way to get it done. Don't look back and say, I should have.
Yeah. And then we also had to deal with our 30-year-old daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer right before my heart gave out. And we helped her through chemo, radiation. The same week I got a new heart, she had a double mastectomy.
That same week.
Dueling hospitals in the city. And it was really tough to stay positive.
I remember having a conversation with her husband right after the diagnosis, and he looked at me and he said, everything has been going so well. We just bought a house, we have a new car, we're living well, life is good, we're married a year, we're so happy with what's going on, and now this happens. And I looked at him and I said very simply, well, all of those things that were going on that were good are still good. You just have one additional layer that you have to deal with. And he did a great job supporting our daughter. And they're now going on with their lives too, so.
Yeah, that's great.
And they're going on their honeymoon in September, finally, after 2.5 years of marriage. Because between COVID not letting them go on a honeymoon and then the breast cancer not letting them go on a honeymoon. So they're finally going to go to Hawaii for some time and actually have the honeymoon. So it can all be done. You just have to really want to do it. You just stay focused. The sky is blue. Don't let the splinter take up all of your thoughts. Can't focus just on the negatives. You got to focus on the positives also.
That. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this point, we're going to stop asking our panelists questions, and we're going to ask the audience if they have any questions that they would either like to ask our panel or the social workers to please write them into the chat and we will address them.
Let's see if we have any questions.
And if we don't, we'll conclude with one last question for the panel.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nina.
Let me know.
I think we can conclude with our question. What do you think?
Okay, so our last question is going to be,
I think I can get this one. Okay.
okay, perfect.
Yep. All right. So, it's one of the things that we've spoken about is the importance of reaching out and finding support, whether that's support groups, individual or couples therapies. We know the importance of these interventions, and they've all been documented to serve as helpful tools in dealing with the emotional impact that a cancer diagnosis can bring on. This question is open to the group. What would you say to a couple that's facing difficulties adjusting to the changes a cancer diagnosis can bring on, who may be afraid to ask for help? Tim and Sandy?
Okay. Being, being afraid to ask for help is a serious problem. You have to admit that you need help in the first place. Help is available. Adelphi Group has a 40-year history. For us, it was coincidence that we knew something. But it's I think important to seek out a resource, and it's not necessarily a medical resource. It can be a religious advisor, a psychologist, a friend. It's communicating, and Bruce has emphasized, and him and Anthony have emphasized it. So Cindy and Sandy and I have. We've been successful. We've all been successful because we started by communicating with each other.
It's not a secret. We bring it out so that we can talk about it. So that really helps too.
Thank you. Kim and Anthony, what would you say to a couple who may be struggling but are afraid to seek help?
I'd say there's no shame in asking for help, and there's no shame in wanting somebody there and just to feel supported, because I think that's what everybody wants in general in life, I guess. And when you have an illness like this and your independence is stripped away from you, you want somebody there to just make you feel like it's okay. And you don't, like most of the time you don't even have to ask for help. And but when you do, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And
Yeah. I was saying to Kim the other day, before, I think it was actually, that like an unfortunate situation like cancer or something serious in your life, it almost kind of accelerates, I think, where your relationship was going to end up, right? So it's like, if the foundation isn't solid and then something like this comes along, it's just going to accelerate the fact that unfortunately the relationship might not be right. And if it's a good relationship and something like this comes along, then it's going to strengthen you and show you that you are in the right place with the right person and whatnot. So, as a horrible of a situation as a cancer diagnosis can be, it can also teach you things about your relationship. And so if someone can't be supportive of you going through something like this, then you shouldn't be with them. And that's kind of what Kim found out the hard way with her previous relationship, and which led her to me, which I'm grateful for. And that's kind of the way I look at it. If you can't communicate with each other, then the rest of it isn't going to really work out. So.
Thanks, Anthony. To Cindy and Bruce, I love, Anthony, that you brought up the foundation, and I guess we can end with this one. A quote that Nina and I found that we really fell in love with said, "Chains do not hold a marriage together. It is threads, hundreds of tiny threads which sew people together through the years." Cindy and Bruce, looking back at your marriage, what would you say has contributed to the strong foundation you have built and helped see you through some of your darkest days?
It starts with the love of one another. It's a big thread, obviously, and understanding where that love comes from. Tim mentioned something earlier before about control and the concept of help and being able to ask for help. And the way it relates to me with Cindy is being able to ask her for help. For me, I'm a bit of a control freak as well. And when I ask for help, that kind of hits me in a couple of different places. First off, it means that I don't have control over the situation. And if I don't have control over it, then how can I correct it? And I should be able to correct anything that comes up. So it's having somebody like Cindy who helps me understand that that's okay. At times, I haven't fully accepted all of it yet, but honestly, you have to be able to ask for help, and that is a big piece of it.
I think you really have to want the relationship to work. And you have to step back. Sometimes I find if I have an idea in my head or an opinion, and it's very strong, but I'm hearing something opposite from him, sometimes I have to say, okay, I think I'm right, but let me really listen and get out of my head and listen to him. And then just look at everything from his perspective. And it can really make a huge difference, a big change, because suddenly I'm turned around and looking at the situation from the other side and say, wait a minute, oh, I didn't consider that this is the way he's feeling. And maybe when I'm doing this or that, that's annoying him, that's how he's feeling. And I didn't consider that before. So I think you have to be open to listen to each other and be willing to say, okay, I was wrong. I'm going to change my mind. And I see where you're coming from now. And if you're both so strong in your opinions and you're not willing to talk and compromise, you're not going to get anywhere. So that is a big way to mesh the relationship together. It's just listening and seeing, being in each other's shoes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we all have to concentrate on the love that we deserve, which keeps on coming up as well. And I can't thank all of you for participating. It was so insightful and inspiring, and you made, I hope, everyone have a new perspective in some way about going through a cancer diagnosis as a couple. I want to remind everyone to fill out the survey that's in the chat box, and that way we as a program will know what you're interested in seeing in the future. I want to thank Adriana as well for doing this with me, and thank everyone for being here and attending, and especially to our amazing couples for opening up their hearts and sharing their stories. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a great night.
Please.